Episode 8. Faith. Faith is not wishful thinking, nor is it merely hope alone. The Bible uses the Greek root pistis, which means belief, trust, confidence, fidelity, faithfulness, from patho, be persuaded, come to trust. Conviction of the truth of anything, belief of a conviction or belief respecting man's relationship to God and divine things. As a working summary for our purposes in this episode, faith is a trust placed in something and or someone. Faith in connection to healing is mentioned directly in the Gospels 17 times and indirectly in many other instances. Prior to the outpouring of the Holy Spirit in Acts 2, faith for healing centers on the person of Jesus, the trust that is in both his ability and willingness to heal. This is demonstrated largely by either the diseased person or someone on behalf of the diseased person. Luke's Gospel provides a concentration of healing accounts in chapters 7 and 8 that exemplify these demonstrations of faith. Luke 7 begins with the healing of a centurion servant. The centurion says to Jesus through his friends, "Say the word, and my servant will be healed." Jesus marvels and wastes no time in pointing out to the surrounding observers how this Gentile has such great faith. His faith is indeed proven great, as the servants who are sent find the servant well. The narrative moves forward from Capernaum to Nain, where, coming near the city's gate, Jesus raises a dead man. Even here, faith may be expressed on behalf of the deceased, as those carrying the man stood still, and neither they nor the weeping widow mother prevented him, despite the aversion that must have been felt through seeing the unfolding clear violation of Jewish purity laws, possibly indicating that they at least had some faith in his ability to do the otherwise impossible. Following the demonstration of messianic proofs via healing to two of John's disciples, verses 19 to 22, and then the exorcism of the man with many demons, chapter 8, verses 28 to 39, we come to the intertwined accounts of the raising of Jairus' daughter and the woman with the flow of blood, chapter 8, verses 40 to 56, showing both the faith of the diseased and the faith of one on the behalf of the deceased. On the way to the dying daughter, Jesus is thronged by multitudes, but stops after perceiving power going out from him. Again, great faith is demonstrated, this time through the woman to whom the power went, she having first broken serious cultural religious barriers in order to touch the hem of Jesus' garment. If the woman had not some inkling of expectation to receive, she would not have risked public disgrace. Jesus vindicates her actions, saying, "Daughter, be of good cheer. Your faith has made you well. Go in peace." Meanwhile, word is received by Jairus that his dying daughter is now dead, to which Jesus, hearing it, answers, "Do not be afraid, only believe, and she will be made well." What must be noted at this point is the prohibiting of all except Peter, James, and John, and the parents of the girl to enter the house, putting all those mourners who ridiculed him for saying, "She is not dead but sleeping," outside. After all these conditions are met, Jesus raises the girl back to life. In light of the imperative of verse 50 to only believe, it seems reasonable to suggest that Jesus wanted only those with faith to be present in the raising of the daughter. The three accounts also provide further insight into the nature of faith, showing how Jesus worked with the level of the faith of each seeker. For the centurion, all that was requested was for Jesus to say the word. For the woman, her expectation was in what would happen if only she touched Jesus' garment. And for Jairus, whose faith appears to be less mature, he felt it necessary for Jesus to actually come in person to his dying daughter. It is difficult to suggest faith is not important for healing when considering how Jesus himself was limited as to the extent of miracles he worked in his own country. Those perhaps too familiar took offense that he could presume to rise above his inherited carpentry class, hence their unbelief in his ability to perform miracles. While it must be noted that Matthew reports that Jesus did not many mighty works, in distinction to Mark's could not, both evangelists highlight that the problem was unbelief. We note also the records of the disciples' failure to heal a certain epileptic, demonstrating the need not only for faith on behalf of those seeking healing, but for those administering it as well. In the account Mark gives, chapter 9, verses 14 to 29, we learn that after the disciples' failure, Jesus responds to the epileptic's father's plea with, "If you can believe, all things are possible to him who believes," to which the father responds, "Lord, I believe. Help my unbelief." After Jesus heals the boy, the narrative moves to the disciples' private question concerning why they were unable to perform the cure, verse 28. In the Textus Receptus, both Matthew and Mark have Jesus explaining that prayer and fasting was necessary for that epileptic's particular kind of demon to be cast out, while Matthew includes, in line with Mark's faith emphasis earlier in the account, "Because of your unbelief. For assuredly, I say to you, if you have faith as a mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, 'Move from here to there,' and it will move, and nothing will be impossible for you." Contrary to the opinion that this statement regarding the mustard seed somehow means that the problem of unbelief was not the amount of faith they did or did not possess, but that they had not at that moment used it, or properly placed it in God or Christ's name, we note that they have already demonstrated faith in Jesus and in the healing of others. Hence the disciples' private question, conveying a sense of surprise at this unsettling event. Therefore, the mustard seed analogy might be better understood as being purposely employed to depict how small faith must grow into greater faith in order to overcome certain situations. The prayer and fasting prescription, then, could be connected in that by adhering thereto, they would increase their faith as a result of having spent time with God, and in like manner to the author and perfecter of their faith, they could expect to continue in the power of the Spirit. At minimum, the implication is that Jesus was prepared through prayer and fasting, whereas the disciples were not. Elsewhere, this effective faith is explained as believing without doubting. The question then is, under what conditions can one hope to not doubt? In Mark 11, a reference to this teaching is situated in the context of a fig tree that Jesus curses with evident success. Verse 24 connects well with teaching found in John, showing the critical nature of faith in prayer. We note here also the command, as opposed to a request, Jesus gave to the fig tree, and the more specific matter of teaching his disciples of whatever they likewise command. And so, for this level of unwavering expectation, it is critical that one know what God's will is in any given situation. Again, Jesus modeled this, claiming that he did nothing except what he saw his Father do, John 5:19, and all who came to Jesus were healed. Nowhere in the Gospels does Jesus deny anyone healing. Neither does he indicate that it is not God's will for any given person to receive healing. The case of a certain leper's question to Jesus, God incarnate, would instead appear to support the opposite. Mark 1:40-42. As Edwards observes, quote, "Leprosy contaminated Israel's status as a holy people. Other illnesses had to be healed, but leprosy had to be cleansed." Mark's account of Jesus and the leper is a mirror image of these tragic realities, for there is no reference to healing, but there are 4 references to cleansing in 6 verses. Lepers were required to stand at a distance of 50 paces. If a leper's entrance into a house contaminated it, or his standing under a tree polluted anyone who passed under it, then this leper's approach compromises Jesus' ritual cleanliness. The leper risks everything, breaking both law and custom. Not even the decrees of the Torah itself prevents him from coming to Jesus. Contained within the leper's pleas are the beginnings of faith that Jesus can save him. His faith is revealed by the fact that he does not question Jesus' ability to save him, only his willingness. Rather than turning from the leper, Jesus turns to him. Indeed, he touches him, bringing himself into full contact with physical and ritual untouchability. This faith in Jesus, in God, being willing to heal, fits well with the wider canonical witness about faith more generally, knowing that, without faith, it is impossible to please him, for he who comes to God must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him. James, making the healing faith connection explicit, has again done well to choose Elijah as an example. It is in knowing God's will to send rain that Elijah puts his faith and acts on it. He does not wait passively, expecting God to automatically fulfill his word, but prays God's will. It needs to be mentioned here also the faith demonstrated through perseverance. 1 Kings indicating Elijah having prayed a total of 7 times for God's will to be done before seeing any results. Only a conviction of God's intention for the rain to come could have enabled such perseverance. Acts, once again echoing the Gospels, also provides 2 clear examples that helps us to see the role of this expecting faith for healings. The first occurs in Acts 3, with the healing of the man lame from his mother's womb. The man's dramatic restoration leads to the opportunity to preach to all the people, who ran together to them, greatly amazed, and to whom Peter explains, "The faith which comes through him, Jesus, has given him this perfect soundness in the presence of you all." Verse 16. The lame man was well known to many due to his begging at the temple, suggesting the high probability that Jesus and his disciples had already passed by the man before. Excluding, for argument's sake, that the lame man may have only recently started being placed at the temple, this would lead to a couple of possibilities. 1. Jesus had chosen not to heal the man because he foresaw the fruit that would come through Peter being used to heal him later. Or 2. The lame man had not up until that point had faith to be healed. But these 2 suggestions need not be exclusive from one another. The latter, however, might link more closely with the second explicit connection between faith and healing found in Acts 14. Here, another lifelong malady is remedied, whereby Paul commands the crippled man to stand up straight on your feet. After observing him intently and seeing that he had faith to be healed, Paul then appears to be operating in like manner to Jesus, responding to those with faith. This case highlights the role of the Spirit to guide the one administering healing, as the text indicates that nothing visible to the naked eye was demonstrated by the lame man to show he had faith, and yet Paul sees that he does indeed have it. This seeing is best understood as God-given, so that Paul was enabled to have confidence to issue the healing command in a loud voice, with the expectation that healing would occur. Therefore, we can conclude that the one who prays for or commands someone's healing without expecting that it is God's desire to heal should not expect to see results, being counter to the faith for healing demonstrated throughout the New Testament.